Okay, so this Mage Priest against Mage Priestar's threat is mainly for Odus to sit on the Mage while also slowing the Priest and killing the water elements. Eventually, we're gonna win by running the Mage. Here we're indecisive and we decide we don't want to fight on the bridge. In hindsight, it would have been much better for us to push in and jump when the water alley comes out. But we jump first and I don't want to leave the medium-sized pillar that I'm at. But better would have been for me to run to the big pillar while Odus intercepts them. Here I'm afraid of the Nova CS Poly, so even though the priest has Fear Ward, I just fear. I get caught in a fear and I will it, which is dumb because the mage is free to sheep me. In fact, he was already casting the Poly while I willed, so it would have been much better to wait. Here I trinket PS, which you can tell by Odus HP was the only move at this point, but I don't PI, which is stupid since I'm clearly global starved. Here I do okay in making distance from the priest and mage. Odus intervenes me, which is good, but it does mean that the priest and mage can chase us both down. Better would be for me to run to the smaller pillar here. And that is possible because the mage doesn't have blink, so he can't stop me, but I didn't think about that at the time. Here I run into the priest because it's pretty much unavoidable at this point, but I could have easily fear warded before to buy myself more time. Unfortunately I don't, and we lose the game. Okay, so this is the same mage priest. I tried to get as many purges in as possible while they're pushing in on me, but they decide it's just better to sit back and let us push into them, which I think is true. So I'm going to cross the pillar that is closer to them first. Now the distance between our respective pillars is shorter, which means I can stay at my pillar and still dispel Odus when he's going to push in. Here the mage tries to mount, so I stop him by dispelling him. We don't want to push in because I'm just going to get CC'd. Instead we want to find an angle for Odus to get a charge. Here the priest dismounts to dispel, and I think that's favorable for us since it allows me to keep distance from the priest. The mage comes in via the other end, so I'm just saving my globals and spamming the spell myself. That way I might avoid the Nova CS sheep. Here the priest comes charging in with Fear Ward, so I try to range him. He gets an insane fear. In game I never guessed that he was in range and in line of sight, and even looking at the recording I would say it's super tight. Here I move in on the mage, which is bad. The priest is already feared, so the mage is a much bigger threat. Fortunately I correct. Odus intervenes because the water elemental is out. I rebuff rank 1 buffs. The mage comes into my line, so I dispel him a little bit. Fortunately I death the full poly, and then I'm half polyed. There's not a lot of pressure on Odus, but Odus still makes the right play and doesn't get dragged out. He can't hit the water alley, so there's nothing for him to do but play defensive. Now they are on a timer, so the priest is forced to come in and fear, and fortunately I ward it. I fear the priest and notice he doesn't will it immediately, so I burn him to force the will. Then the priest makes a really sneaky play. The mage is spam pulling Odus at the moment, so I have to dispel Odus, but I don't want to be in line of sight of the mage all the time, since then he can just cast a cheeky poly on me while I dispel Odus. But the priest sneaked in behind me and he gets a burn in. Again, Odus is doing the right thing by pulling back and not chasing. He gets a huge mace stun on the priest. And I dispel the priest a little bit. Unfortunately, the mage gets frostbite and the priest manages to land another insane fear. Personally, I wouldn't even have tried that one. Odus does a great job stopping the damage from the mage. I do poor global management. Because of the fear, I'm too far from the pillar, so I should keep my global so I can Shadow Word Death until I'm at the pillar again. Unfortunately, I shield Odus immediately and then I eat the full poly. The mage repolys me. Odus chases the priest a bit, but he switches back to the mage to prevent the most damage. I try to death the poly, but I'm too early and cause pushback. The priest is drinking, so I pop PI so I can spam dispel Odus and force the priest to heal. Then I do a stupid dispel on the pain suppression. Here I'm slow to reposition, but eventually I get to the right position. I try to score a drink, but the priest prevents me. Here I'm pretty proud of myself. Before I started doing these analyses, I would have taken the shortest path just to dispel Odus, which is right through the mage, but that's way too dangerous. Instead I do the right thing and I take the long way around, which is safer, creates distance and then gets intercepted. The mage tries to peel by spamming Poly and then Blizzards, which I think he should have done the other way around. If he Blizzards first, then I would have to leave the pillar to dispel the Poly because Odus would be further range for me, and that would give them room for counterplay. I just try to burn him and I get CS, which I think is perfectly fine. I don't think it's worth faking burns. I put up some buffs on Odus before he goes around the pillar, and I try to create max distance from the mage. Here I learned something about my keyboard. Apparently you can press A, which is strafe left, and G, which is shadow or death, at the same time. Odus does the right thing here. I'm in a full poly, so he just sits behind the pillar. I'm leaving combat. I think I should have gone behind the pillar, but instead I decide to drink immediately. Now the priest is drinking, so we need to pressure the mage. First I burn, which takes the CS off the table. And here I think I made a nice play. Odus is in a Nova and my counterspell is about to run out, but I also see that the mage is casting Poly. So I'm not just bashing my dispel button, but instead I just wait a little bit longer so I can maybe get the Poly and a Nova in the same global. And I do. The priest is trying to burn me, but my positioning is good. Here I make a mistake. I go in a burn battle with the priest even though I'm behind on cast. And I also know that this guy runs almost double the region that I do. Here I switch pillars, which is good, but then I run in front of the pillar like a noob and I get burned. Fortunately, the mage is making no pressure. Odus gets sheeped, but I can't help it because I'm going to eat at least 3 burns to get it. Instead, I leave combat and I mount and dispel the sheep, and I don't get burned in the process. The priest decides to pull back, so I burn him. I try to outrange his counter burn by giving him pushback, but I don't manage to. Fortunately, all this time Odus just owning the mage. Here I do a good job of lining the Poly. Just need to be glued to those pillars. Odus gets the mace stun, which is huge, and he also pummels the Poly, which is super important because the priest has PI here, so he could just spam burn me while I move in to dispel it. Fortunately, the mage doesn't make any pressure, so I go for a drink. The priest keeps me, but that wastes his mana and it puts him in a bad position. Odus capitalizes on this, and this intercept is super good for me because now I get to stay near my pillar and Odus still gets to build a lot of pressure. Here I'm forced to move away from my pillar, but I'm still trying to keep max distance from the mage. The third water elemental comes out, so I cast Pain Suppression on Odus. Here I decide to just go for the cast, since the priest is still recovering, so he won't be doing any damage. And if I can sneak in a flash heal, it's nice. And if I get full CS, then the CS is off the table and Odus won't die. But now it turns out that it was actually quite close. Here the priest fiends, so I shield Odus. The priest dispels the shield, but fortunately for us that means he doesn't have time to heal the mage, and the mage dies. So these were the games I had to show to you today. I think my play has potential, but I still made many mistakes. Most significantly, I need to not get caught in my global and get polyed. Also, in these situations where it's clear that I'm going to clash with the enemy priest and I have Fear Ward, I should at least use it. And lastly, I need to stop making weird plays like this where I run in front of a pillar instead of behind it. If you enjoyed this or you learned something, then consider subscribing for more videos.